minute. Just give me a second. Okay, welcome everyone. So I want to welcome Rivka Goldstein, who I adore personally. So Rivka Goldstein graduated from Harvard with a degree in theology. She's the author of Creating a Life That Matters, a book based on Hasidic teachings of Rabbi Manis Friedman. She's a dating, marriage, and family therapist and a teacher at a seminary in Florida. Learn more about her at ask.rivka.com. So I'm very, very privileged and honored to present to you Dada Rivka.
Shalom uvracha, ladies. So, Nomi, so good to hear your voice and this really Kiddush Hashem platform that you put together. Like, it just blows my mind to see so many holy women coming together to do this. This is really special. Wow. So, Nomi, pat yourself in the shoulders. I celebrate with you. I'm going to dance with you in the front line when the Mashiach comes. So, speaking of coming to Mashiach coming, if any of you were in Eretz Israel during this recent war, you would understand what I mean when I say we wanted to organize a protest called Let My People Sleep. Now, between watching the news and following the news like a hawk and running in and out of the bomb shelters, we hardly slept. We're all a tad zombie even now, right? So, especially those of us who just arrived when the war started. So, in addition to the jet lag and the, travel fatigue, now we're really, really zombie. It was really, really hard. But I want to tell you a few stories that happened in the Mamad that was so special. One Friday night I was hosting, and I had about 9 guests, so 10 plus me. And just when I served the fish course, the siren went off. So everybody got up with a cup in one hand and the fish plate on the other. And everybody ran to the mamad together with that. And we stayed there. And while we were there, I gather up anybody else who was at the mamad and I say, wait a minute, it's Friday night, they're not having a meal. So come over. So we ended up having a party in my house Friday night. People that I collected from the mamad, my neighbors. Some of them have kids, which you can imagine running to the mamad, when the siren goes off, you have to gather up all the children. My neighbor has 3 kids under 6. They put them in a stroller. It's a production. And there was this Australian couple who was visiting, and I said to her, wow, I guess, does this mean that, you will not make Aliyah now that you experience this while on vacation? She said, no, not necessarily. And I just thought, wow, this is like the Jewish spirit, that someone who is visiting on vacation, experiencing a war, says, no, I'll still move here. This is very, very special. I had a Christian lady who was in the mamad, and I invited her. It was her first Shabbat meal that she ever had. So that was special. So I thought I'll share that with you. So today's topic, we're going to talk about...
Rivka, I just want to ask you something. There's no mamad in each apartment in the building you're in? Only like a main mamad?
Yeah, on the same floor. Mine is on every floor. Even though it's a brand new building, I don't know why they didn't build it inside. But in some ways, yeah, it was every floor has a mamad.
So in the middle of the night, people had to wake their kids up, go into the hall, and run into the mamad rather than mamad.
Yes, down the hallway. Yeah, yes, yes.
Gosh,
I know. So imagine, and I have this neighbor that she's saying, everybody, please, please just, she doesn't want to wake up her kids. Everybody be quiet. So my floor is the only mamad where the lights are not on because we want to make sure that her baby sleeps through the night. But it's real, yeah. And about the rest of us, right? I never thought that I would have to get dressed up when I go to bed at night. But this whole time, yeah, right? You can't be running to the mama in the middle of the night in your,
Oh
You have to
my,
be, yeah, yes. And a friend of mine who just make Aliyah, oops, did I lose you?
no,
Hold
you're
on.
here. You're perfect.
Okay, I
Perfect.
don't see, okay. So what was
You
interesting
froze
is
for a
that
second. You're frozen
I
for a
did.
second.
Am I back though? Because I don't see me, but I
No,
don't
I
have to
see you,
see.
but you're frozen.
Great, okay. So, wait, I'm frozen, you said?
Yeah, you're frozen for some reason. Yeah. Are
Okay,
you
let me
talking
go.
about, is it Deborah? Is it Deborah? Is that the one you're talking about who made Aliyah? That one?
Yes, yes, she made Aliyah about the same time as me. So she got in literally 2 weeks before I got in before the big war, but she got in for the major one. I mean, there is a difference. I didn't realize that because when I first got here, I don't know if it was the Houthis or who was sending us the bomb, and no one was taking it seriously. I slept through a few of them, and Israelis, they'll continue whatever activities they were doing. But the Iran one, everybody was
I
taking it
know.
seriously.
I know.
I,
I know.
yeah, yeah. Wait, wait, did you see me? I can't find Zoom now. Hold
No,
on.
you're still frozen.
Okay, how
I
about
There
now?
you
can't
are.
see
There,
her at
perfect.
Okay,
all.
Perfect.
great. Oh, how about now?
Yeah, perfect. Perfect.
Okay, so she sent me a WhatsApp from a police officer in Beersheba with some suggestions. It says that you should go into the mamad with a few things like your passports, a few personal items, and you most certainly should be wearing shoes because you should assume that you don't come back to your apartment. So that was intense, right? So she says to me to make sure I do that because I'm running the mama in my barefoot because it's just down the hall from me. But she says, no, you got to put on shoes. Just you have to assume that, in the event that you don't come back. And I'm thinking to myself that Chas Shalom, there is a direct hit. You don't make it anyway. So
No, but
yeah.
you do. Most people that were in their mamads, there was like just one or two stories. Actually, Tila's roommate was going out with a guy whose building was completely hit. He was in the mamad, and he had to be rescued, but they all survived.
Oh, wow. 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 Talk
Anyways,
about
go ahead,
trauma.
Rivka. Go
So
ahead.
talk about trauma, right? Yeah, that's real. So while I'm sitting at the mama at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, I started to reflect and I compare and contrast this external war to the internal one that we fight, right? So as a therapist, I work closely with individuals and with families on the battles that they fight that we call it that no one sees. That there is a battle that we fight. Unlike a physical war that takes place in the field, in the air, and the sea, it's visible to the world. An internal war takes place in the realm of our mind, at home, in relationships that are often invisible to others. But they are no less intense, no less fearsome, tedious, painful, and sometimes life threatening. So I'll give you a few real life examples. Like this girl, she's suicidal because she was raised by the father who drugged and abused her entire life. Or this woman who tells me that she goes from one dysfunctional relationship to another because she never felt validated or connected from her parents who died, she said, without knowing who their daughter was. And then this other woman who had to terminate a pregnancy when she found out that she contracted STD from her husband, who later called her a sinner because she had an abortion. And the same man had squandered their child's education on prostitutes. So all these women, they have been living in a war zone from a very young age, right? They are accustomed to warfare. How about this young man who was raised by a very controlling mother and had a hard time making a commitment for marriage because he interprets love as smothering, as suffocation, and he interprets love as criticism, pressure, and a threat to his autonomy. So he also grew up in war zone. And just 2 days ago, I was speaking to a wife who tells me that her husband is also suicidal. And he has a hard time navigating a marriage. And who can blame him? He was raised by a narcissistic father who was also very controlling, and a helpless mother, a mother who just did not take over and let the abuse continue. So these are the ongoing internal and external war that women fight. And both kinds of war, the physical and the emotional war, has collateral damage, and they can result in all kinds of symptoms, right? Like a soldier who suffered a shell shock in war share the same consequences as a woman or a man who cope with emotional abuse. They both experience anxiety, insomnia, phobias, flashbacks. Speaking of flashbacks, so, prior to coming to Eretz Israel, this trip, when I'm in a big city and I hear the sirens go off from the police, it's almost a background noise. You just tune it out. But now that I've experienced actual sirens and running through the mamad, when I hear the police siren, you freeze for a second and say, wait, what am I hearing? Is it time, So you become hyper vigilant. You have these unexplained fears and phobias, which can, hush shalom, lead to depression. This war that we fight, both external and internal, can result in the same consequences, like the loss of life. The loss of vitality is also loss of life, right? So fighting someone is an emotional war, takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy from you. It's exhausting. And it makes us question sometimes our faith. Does God exist? Why it's happening? Which reminds me of a beautiful, beautiful analogy about two twins that are in their mother's womb. So one turned to the other and said, I can hardly wait to get out of here and meet our mother. And the other one says, what mother? This is it. This is where we are. And the twins say, no. We have a mother that we're going to meet when we leave this place. And the other say, no, we don't have one. This is all we have. And then the other twins say, no, you can't see her because you're in her. You're inside of her. You're connected to her. All of you are getting life from her. We're getting oxygen from her. We're getting our nutrients from her. She exists, and we're going to meet her when we're born and we're birth. And the other twin was like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. So I think about this when I was sitting in the mamad saying, Hashem is with us, all around us. We are still protected in Hashem's womb, but we don't see or feel in times where we are challenged, in times when we are threatened. So there is a question of faith, and then there is a loss sometimes of purpose and identity. Who am I? Why am I here? And after fighting a war, there's always the question about your self-esteem. Like, do I got this? Do I not get this? I'm such a failure because I can't get out of bed, or I'm having a hard time navigating whatever it is, a marriage, a job, a situation. And then there is the result of or consequences of mental assault and health, like PTSD. We are all affected by, post-traumatic disorder. It's very real. Yeah. I knew it in textbook, but now I'm starting to experience it, right? There is the trauma, being anxiety stricken from all these experiences. Now, I did another talk on the difference between a big T trauma and a small T trauma, complex trauma. And I'll give you a quick summary of that. Most people understand trauma from war, from natural disasters, catastrophe. And they're very real. They're very real, right? And most facilities are set up to treat big T traumas, people who have been through serious and difficulties. But complex traumas are less known, less treated, even though it has over 60 symptoms, while big T trauma has maybe 12, insomnia, flashbacks, but small little T trauma or complex trauma has far more consequences, right? It makes someone not able to function or paranoid or addictions. These are all results of complex trauma and also big T trauma. In both cases, we end up oftentimes with autoimmune diseases or with aches and pains. Kashrei Shalom. I want to share with you something that I read from Dr. Sarno. I don't know, any one of you know that he wrote a book called Healing Back Pains. Dr. Sarno discovered in his practice that people that come in to see him in his practice, some of them from his x-ray, he sees that they have real fractured. And those people have no actual acute symptoms or pain. Conversely, some people that don't have, that nothing shows up on their x-rays, have intense acute and chronic pain. And he was curious and he did a whole line of studies. Again, his book is called Healing Back Pains. And he came up with a conclusion that so much of our symptoms are psychosomatic. Now, I think we know that already, but it's still an interesting read for those of you who are interested. The interesting thing about healing from the two different wars, a physical war obviously ends through peace treaties, surrender, ceasefire, or rebuilding. And emotional wars end with awareness, with forgiveness, in setting health boundaries, in going to therapy. But the latter takes a longer time to rebuild because the pain of an emotional war is more abstract and personal. So rebuilding identity, relationships, and mental strength takes time. And we want to be extra gentle and kind with ourselves when we are going through, when we're healing for those kind of trauma. And we prepare ourselves. Just like Yehoshua led the Bnei Israel into battle by preparing himself spiritually, Torah gives us solutions for fighting emotional warfare as well. As Rav Kook says, that the war within us is not one of destruction, but of clarification. In our struggle, and by struggling, we come to understand who we are. And I discovered this in this war. I discovered that Eretz Israel is truly our home. And I look around everybody who is here, it does not make sense that we feel more connected to the land in time of war. So there is something very, very unique and special about that. The first step, I'm going to give you 4 steps on how we can overcome and heal from emotional war. The first step is self-awareness. Not denial or not escapism, but in acknowledging. The Sefes Emes teach us that the Yetzer Hara often disguises itself as your own best thinking, meaning delusional, right? Like the guy who comes to therapy, he will, sometimes through coercion, wives will often bring their husbands to therapy. And it's not uncommon for me to hear a man say, I know all my blind spots. I know the problem is my wife. I know all my issues. Well, the opposite happens to sometimes, but generally, when a man comes to therapy, I have to very gently help him understand that the first form of idol worship is the worship of self. David Hamelech, when he tells us, we have eyes, but we don't see. We have ears, but we don't hear. Who is he talking about? He's talking about the first first form of idol worship, which is, again, the worship of the self. It is an idol worship that is a worship that is so intrinsic and that we're born with it that we don't even realize sometimes that that is, self-entitlement and it's a form of idol worship. So honesty is key, right? We look at ourselves and our relationships and ask ourselves blankly, just as there are physical symptoms that tells us something is wrong. You have tummy ache, you have a headache. It's a physical symptoms. There are emotional symptoms. Emotional symptoms frequently manifest itself through relationships, how we face relationships and how we handle them. And how we can also look at our lives and see if there is a lack of vitality or joy or freedom. These are all symptoms of emotional battles. Torah tells us that while the battlefield is visible in the physical war, the emotional war is in the lev, in our heart, when our heart is under siege. And again, some of the symptoms are fears, grief, anger, jealousy, despair, or shame. Shame is a big one. Shame not as a feeling, but shame as an identity. And that's why we're told to guard our heart, to fortify it with emunah, with Hashem, with Torah, and don't let anybody walk all over your heart. In Mishlei 4, we are told that Mikol Mishma Netzol Libecha. More than anything, we should guard our heart. And we should guard our heart and not let anyone walk all over or abuse it. Baal Shem Tov taught us that every challenge is a mirror, a reflection of what we must work on the inside. So while it's easy to identify the external enemies, they're all more easily recognizable. Like, Iran and his proxies, may they all be eradicated now. But the harder is who we perceive in our personal life as our enemies, like Hash Shalom, our mother-in-law, son or daughter-in-law, our exes, parents, stepchildren, brother, sister, the annoying neighbor, the community member, co-worker. Sometimes they give us legitimate reasons to go to war. And this is why Hashem gave us the mitzvah of Ahavas Israel. Ahavas Israel is one of the hardest mitzvahs on the planet. The second way that we fight emotional war is through spiritual accounting. Heshbon Hanefesh. The Torah tells us that we can learn from everyone, even from a thief. So when we're fighting our enemies, we want to think about the Yetzer Hara, the enemy. We think to ourselves that we have to be like that thief who is very swift, who is laser focused, task-oriented, who is diligent and unrelenting. And we can learn from the thief how to handle our Yetzer Hara. And of course, we want to distance ourselves from harmful thoughts, environments, and people. Sumera Asetov, to do good, to bring in positivity. I think that this is a group of very holy women who understand that very well. We can do it through daily meditation, reflection, exercise. I think about that the Lubavitcher Rebbe tells us to, the Tefillin campaign. And he's saying that, this is one of the ways that we fight both the internal and external war. Lubavitcher Rebbe says that when a man put on the tefillin, it causes fears in the heart of our enemies. And so that brings us to the third point, which is the weaponry. Torah, mitzvahs, tefillah, tzedakah are all the weapons that we use to fight both the external and internal war. Torah itself is a weapon. Barati yatse hara ubarati lo Torah taflin. I created the evil inclination, Hashem tells us, and I created the Torah as its antidote. So Baruch Hashem, Todala Hashem, Torah is not just a physical a history of a physical struggles, but it's a manual for our internal war, the kind that defines our character, our destiny, and ultimately our relationship with God, the one that defines all relationships. David Hamelech tells us that great peace have those who love your Torah, and nothing can make them stumble. Torah studies build spiritual resilience. More Torah we absorb, the stronger our defenses. And I see this mostly with the young men and women. They are truly, there's so many of them that are truly inspirational. The ones who are raised with Torah, they are more resilient. And they are truly, you see that Torah protects them. Well, as someone who did not grow up with that, I truly appreciate it when I see children that are raised with Torah and mitzvahs. And fourth is the last and most important thing, and that is reinforcements. In physical war as in emotional, we need community, we need mentors, we need support. I said, just as armies fight in units, we are not meant to fight alone. In Kohelet, we learned that two are better than one. If one falls, the other one can pick him up. So having a Havrusa, a mentor, support, soul sisters, the Lubavitcher Rebbe in the 80s started a campaign to ask all his followers to have mentors, to have mashpia, and because two Yetzir Tov is better than one Yetzir Hara. And therefore, we need, it's important for us to get support. I think this is a very hard one for women because especially those of us who grew up feel, taking care of everything on our own. It's a lot harder for us to seek help. And so I want to encourage everybody that if you are struggling with something, to not go through it alone. The Torah validates that we are warriors, right? We are and Hashem is with us in all our wars. And I think about that again, like when you're sitting in the mamad and you say to yourself, Hashem is with us. David Hamelech says every day, evening, morning, and noon, I cry out and Hashem hears my voice. So we must not underestimate the power of calling out to Hashem in moments of our distress. In Yirmiyahu, we hear that I will heal your wounds, Hashem said. So even after every failure, after every spiritual healing is possible. Hashem created a world where change is possible by the millisecond. He creates the world by the second and by a millisecond. And Hasidus tells us that if not so, the world will cease to exist. So oftentimes I tell my client that anxiety is because if Hashem gives us energy by the second, we are anxious because he hasn't given us the energy that we need yet to deal with what we need the next second. So we have to sit tight and only deal with what's going on in this moment and then wait for Hashem to give us the energy that we need the next moment and not be caught in our anxiety. So Hashem acknowledged that the inner war that we fight is real and is holy. Every war that we fight is real and it's holy. And that in both our physical and emotional war, Ki Hashem Elokehem halolek imachem lichichalachem lachem im ovechem leusha etchem. Hashem, your God, walks with you to fight your enemies and to save you. So again, this is true in both physical and emotional war. The Rambam tells us that every war is a test of our emunah and our inner strength. So our struggle is our mission. Our mission is our purpose. And so whenever we're struggling, we remember that we're in Hashem's army. The Zohar tells us that every woman comes into this world on a voluntary basis. Zohar says that even Hashem himself cannot convince a woman to come if she doesn't want to. So every one of us who here is here on a voluntary basis. And this mission was given to us by our Babi Chava, in Gan Eden. She was the one that told Adam, eat of this fruit so that we can all leave Gan Eden, go down to the lowest of the lowest world, where it's where Hashem meets us. So she was the one that gave us our mission. She was the one that continued to support us with all our Avinu and our Imenu. In a physical war, a victory is declared when the other side surrenders. But in an emotional war, we win when we find inner peace. I know what you're doing here, Nomi, is exactly that. You fortify the woman day after day, week after week. You prepare them to fight this war. So I should say that victory is coming, and it's not just survival. It's the blossoming of our neshama. May Hashem bless us to win this emotional war with dignity, in dignity, with emunah, and with the sweetness of our ultimate redemption.
Thank you, Rivka. Beautiful. Wow, Baruch Hashem. I can't even imagine. I'm so sorry I'm not there when you guys have been going through. It's crazy.
Right. I know it's too much for those, for some of us. So, but the truth is, Baruch Hashem, we will be greeting the Mashiach very soon. So come back, Nomi.
I am. I am, Rivka. I'm coming soon. Bezrat Hashem.
Very good, very good. Okay.
Okay.
Everybody should have a Kiddush Hashem day. Bye.
Thank you, Rivka. Thank you. Okay, everyone.